dear African youth in the continent and diaspora. As we celebrate the African Youth Day this 1st November 2017, I have a great pleasure to remind you that the year 2017 was dedicated to youth by African heads of state and government under the theme Harnessing the Demographic Dividend through Investment in Youth. On behalf of African youth and my own behalf, I sincerely wish to thank the African Union heads of state and government for dedicating this year 2017 to the youth of the continent, and especially for the designation of the champion of the theme, His Excellency President Idriss Déby Itno, President of the Republic of Chad, whose support to youth led to concrete achievements, including the creation of the African Youth Development Fund with 1% of the African Union budget contribution as initial amount. We commend the African Union member states that have created at national level a National Youth Development Fund, and we appeal to those who haven't done so to do it in order to promote youth entrepreneurship and employment so that youth can be able to stem the flow of illegal migration to Europe. May the government of the Democratic Republic of Congo fund through this message our deep gratitude for its continuous support to the Pan-African Youth Union. We ask the African Union Commission, in collaboration with the Pan-African Youth Union and the champion of the 2017 African Union Theme of the Year, His Excellency President Idriss Déby Itno, President of the Republic of Chad, to accelerate the process of operationalization of the African Youth Development Fund by January 2018 AU Summit, in order for it to become effective as recommended by the July 2017 Summit of Heads of State and Government. Throughout 2017, we traveled across Africa and the world for high-level diplomatic meetings, which resulted in the commitment of heads of state to invest in youth. The organization of the Pan-African Youth Forum in Jamena, the Africa-Europe Youth Summit, the World Festival of Youth and Students, and many other achievements, whose effect will be crucial for Africa youth. We call on the African Union Commission to accelerate any initiative aimed at the development of youth by truly involving legitimate continental youth representatives. We call on the African Union Commission and the European Union to strengthen cooperation between African and European youth in supporting youth leaders from our two continents, the Pan-African Youth Union and the European Youth Forum, in all youth initiatives undertaken by our institutions. At this time that Africa is preparing to welcome Europe in Abidjan at the 5th African Union and European Union Heads of State Summit with a theme on youth, we thank the European Youth Forum for their frank collaboration and consideration, which led us to a successful 4th Africa Europe Youth Summit held recently in Abidjan in Côte d'Ivoire. The summit has given hope to both generations of young Africans and Europeans who are ready to do things differently and to have frank and win-win relationship not based on the hypocrisy of Africa-Europe cooperation. Africa must win just like Europe, because none of these continents is under the control of another. Africa is a continent and not a state. We are a great people that deserves its place. We denounce the inefficiency and lack of equity in the leadership of the youth division within the African Union Commission. That is why we are appealing to the President of the African Union Commission to ensure that this division is truly at the service of African youth in accordance with the legal documents of the AU, by giving priority to the Union member states, by strengthening its national youth organizations, pending the creation of a full directorate in charge of youth within the AU Commission as recommended by the AU Reform Project. We condemn any outside interference within internal matters of the African Union member states aimed at destabilizing our countries under the pretext of democracy and human rights, and especially undemocratic regime change strategies that benefits its commanditors rather than the African people. We renew our commitment to promote Pan-Africanism and the patriotism of African youth. We encourage African Union member states to put in place appropriate measures to control funding of certain youth movements by some international organizations, as most of these youth movements have become a source of our continent's destabilization. We call on African youth to show their patriotism to defend our countries. Young Africans are becoming increasingly aware of a new form of colonialism that threatens the stability of the continent. We remain on the side of African youth to defend their interests, knowing that we do not represent ourselves, but those who trusted in us. Unemployment continues to be a major problem of African youth that African Union member states must absolutely fight by investing in youth. We congratulate Russia through His Excellency President Vladimir Putin for hosting the 19th World Festival of Youth and Students, which brought together a greater number of African countries without any discrimination, unlike other selective youth events organized around the world. I appreciate the strengthening of relations between young Africans and young Russians, relationship based on mutual respect. We reiterate our call for the reform of the United Nations and request for a permanent seat of Africa within the United Nations Security Council. We condemn the political manipulation of African youth that leads them to violence in several African countries, especially in South Sudan, in Kenya, Central African Republic, Somalia, Democratic Republic of Congo, Burundi, Mali, and other countries, and warn its commentators to avoid. We call on young Africans to boycott any government program in the country that does not have concrete projects in their favor. We call on African parliaments not to adopt any governmental budget that does not take into account investment in youth. We would be grateful to African governments to support national youth councils in the respective countries to enable them play their full role as stipulated in the African Youth Charter. Young people are an asset for Africa's competitiveness. By preparing African youth for their future, Africa prepare its future. We cannot conclude this message on this special day that we celebrate African youth within the continent in diaspora without thanking the President of the Republic of Guinea and the African Union Chairperson, His Excellency President Alpha Condé, for his commitment in the implementation of the African Union 2017 theme of the year, which led to several concrete results, and we are looking forward for his successor to continue the same way. Long live African youth, long live Africa, and thank you.